Good. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate everyone taking out of their busy weekend to be here, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day. So for you to come in here indoors when you could be outside, I really appreciate it. One of the things that we try to do is to fulfill our commitment that we make, and that is to report to the different counties that we represent. Currently, it's 16 counties in Florida's 2nd Congressional District. So today, we're fulfilling our commitment, and we'll continue to do this. We spend quite a bit of time in Tallahassee. When we have a constituent work week, when we're home for an 8 to 10 day period, we usually spend half of that time here in Tallahassee. And so I appreciate very, very much you being here. We also want to make sure that you hear from us as often as you would like. So I would ask all of you to, if you are interested in getting our e-newsletter, that you go to our website, Southerland.house.gov, to sign up for that e-newsletter. And we will be communicating with you on a more regular basis about issues that we are following in Washington, D.C., as well as pieces of legislation and things that we think are on the horizon. So we want you to stay as in touch as you want to be. We don't want to be bothersome, but we do believe that it is important for you to hear from us and get information from us. Another thing that Jonathan is handing to me now, we also have some brochures here that we will hand out, and I hope you will grab one of these before you go. And this just outlines a little information about our offices, where our office locations are, the phone numbers, the contact information. And so we will continue to make sure that it is easy for you to get in touch with us, whether you call us in our office in D.C. or our office here in Tallahassee. Please make sure to reach out to us whenever you have a need. On any issues regarding Social Security, VA, IRS issues, those are the things, State Department issues. I'm amazed at how often we get calls from people that are maybe overseas and they're struggling to get back into the United States. So those are services that we provide for our constituents. So if you have friends or family or church members, oftentimes on church trips, we find ourselves helping people in that regard quite often. So please make sure you grab one of these. And one of the things that this also tells you about our office is kind of what we stand for. Being a freshman member of Congress, I believe that the biggest deficit that we face in leadership right now is the deficit of trust. Trust is only established when people do what they promised they were going to do. And I don't care whether you're building a marriage or a family or a church or a business, especially a government. When you don't do what you promised people you were going to do, it's hard to establish trust. And so one of the things we are attempting to do is to make sure that we spend enough time with you, and it has to be balanced. 2 days ago we spoke to the law school at Florida State, and brilliant young people that are about to start their careers. And one of the things we spent time talking about was balance. How do you spend the time we have to spend in Washington, D.C., and the sessions that we spend there, while at the same time getting the job done that we have to do in D.C., but not up there all the time. We have to be back here because we're a representative form of government. We have to make sure that we communicate with you face to face. So that's a neat thing about the People's House. Okay, our founding fathers never intended for Washington to be my home. They intended for us to be here, to know you, learn from you, hear your hopes, your concerns, and then go to D.C., do the people's work, return, and continue to listen and continue to be a representative. So the struggle is that balance. Where do we find that balance? That we get the job done we need done, but at the same time still make sure we have a good level of communication that only occurs if we communicate with you. So one of the things I want to do today is just report to you on where we find ourselves going forward. Now, when we were running, we were terribly concerned when we started our first pursuit to be a member of Congress. We did so because we were so disheartened by the level of fiscal spending, and really the irresponsibility that I think most Americans agree with. The federal government has grown in an enormous way, and that has come at a great cost, because what we have done is we have mortgaged our future, and we have mortgaged our children's future. That is taxation, by the way, without representation. When you mortgage your children's future and they don't have any say, that is taxation without representation. So one of the things that one of the reasons we ran was because of the fiscal debacle that we were in. And I remember during our first 24 months ago, we owed about $15 trillion. That debt that we owe is now up around close to $16 trillion. So we're moving in a direction that is not satisfactory to me. We're moving in a direction that is irresponsible. And one of the things that really is difficult for me is the lack of sense of urgency that is in Washington, D.C. And let me say this, that is a part of the environment there. I see that on both sides of the aisle. So it really drives me crazy, having never been in elected office before, not on the local or state level, but to be in a position where you see such a gigantic problem, but no real sense of urgency in how we address that problem. So a lot of the battles that we have been fighting, the CRs of last year, the continuing resolutions that we were battling last year, and I think we will continue to battle going forward, are going to deal with the money. You're looking at the massive expansion of the federal government over the last several years. If you factor in stimulus spending, discretionary spending in Washington D.C. has grown in an enormous percentage, and I would say beyond the ability of the American people to be able to pay for it. So what I want to do is I want to see Washington do what you have to do in your family budgets. I want to see Washington do what my family and small business owners like our family has to do. You have to live within your means. You have to select priorities. You have to say, you know what? Okay, here's what we've got coming in, and what we spend cannot exceed that. The states have to do that. You're the home of the state government here. You know that Florida has a requirement to balance its budget. So you cannot spend more in Florida than we have, than the estimating conference predicts that we're going to have coming into the state treasury. So it's no different. And that's common sense, by the way. And by the way, I've learned in D.C. common sense is not embraced. And the reason that I come home is not just to see my constituents, but it's also to make sure that common sense makes sense to me. Because I think we've seen examples time and time again where people go to D.C. and common sense doesn't make sense to them anymore. So a lot of the battles that we're fighting has been over debt issues, spending issues. One of the things that we will continue, and you'll continue to hear about over the next several months, is going to be the debt ceiling. You all are aware of the debt ceiling battles that we fought last year. The president wanted a extension of the debt ceiling, about $2.4 trillion in a raise of the debt ceiling. That would get the federal government beyond the election of November. And now we are learning that the money that the federal government was granted, they are burning through it at such an incredible rate that there's a very good chance that the federal government will once again hit the debt ceiling limit before the election. So the $2.4 trillion that the federal government was given just last year it has continued to do what the federal government does very, very well. The president is obviously the president put on our desk about 3-4 weeks ago his 2013 budget request. It is the responsibility of Congress to produce a budget. And I want to be very clear here. There are certain things that I think the federal government has the constitutional responsibility to do. The House of Representatives, are supposed to be the house of the branch of government that controls the purse strings. It is our responsibility to produce a budget. Last year we produced a budget. Unfortunately, we don't have a willing partner in the Senate. Under Harry Reid's leadership, 2010, 2011, and 2012, the Senate has not produced a budget. And 3 weeks ago, Leader Reid, he made the proclamation that he has absolutely no intent to fulfill the constitutional responsibility of his chamber. He will not offer a 2013 budget. I just don't get that.
Why does he get to keep his job?
I just don't, because the good people of Nevada sent him there.
Can't the good people in Congress make it?
We're a representative form of government. I have no control over Harry Reid in the Senate. And so, you know, we will continue to do our responsibility, and I will continue to do what is within my power, and I am one of 435 members in the House. You know, unlike some in DC, I know that I'm not a king. I don't believe that I'm a king. And so therefore, I will do what I feel is in the best way to serve you. So we will continue. We're debating our budget now, but it is very aggravating for me when we've already been told that whatever budget that we put forward, that the Senate, under the direction of Senator Reid, will not hear. It will be tabled, and it will not be heard. So that's disappointing, because if you go to any first-year financial planner right out of school, you and your spouse, let's say you're in a financial mess, and you go to this first-year financial planner right out of college, and you're asking him for advice, the very first thing he's going to say to you, we have to devise a budget. And so it is aggravating that when you are a part of leading the largest enterprise on planet Earth, $16 trillion in debt, and when your financial statement, if shrunk down to the size of a small business, would not even get you in front of a loan committee at a community bank because it is in such a woeful state. For me to take my financial statement and if I had $2 billion, let's say if I had $2 million in revenues, but I had almost $4 million in expenses last year, do you think the president of the bank would allow my loan application to even make it to a loan committee, to waste their time? No, the answer is no. The answer is no. So I think that it doesn't make sense. And so we're going to continue. The reason I mentioned the debt issue is that's going to continue to be front page news going forward. So I mentioned that to you. And if we do, in fact, hit the debt ceiling again prior to the election, it's going to be a very eventful news cycle as we lead up to the election. Another thing I think you're going to continue to hear a lot of, and that is the Keystone Pipeline. The president continues to say that you know, his number one priority is jobs, and yet you take the largest shovel-ready job in America, which is the Keystone Pipeline. The pipe is produced, the pipe is there. By the way, the environmental impact studies have all been done. And so when the president says we have to study it more, that's we've studied. We've studied, and we have you know, we have all of our the ability to refine this oil. We just have to get it to it. It is very, very difficult. And I will tell you this, and I think the president's explanations to the American people of not passing the sniff test, I think he's trying to explain against common sense. And I think to say that we care about the environment. However, what we want is we want Canada to build a pipeline over the Canadian Rockies to pump that crude from the Canadian sands into tankers, and we want those tankers to navigate the ocean and then take that oil to a country who has a woeful environmental record. I think, how can that be in the best interest of the environment? It's not. And I do think that the Keystone Pipeline, in talking with members from other states in the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, these little communities, these little rural counties that pipeline would be going through, they are just, they're dying on a vine. I mean, they don't have the tax base, they're hurting in this difficult economic downturn, and so they're begging for an operation such as this. What it means to the local economies, to the restaurants, to the hotels, to their job, their workforce. So, you know, that's aggravating. And so, you know, I think that to say to the American people, we're doing all we can do, and we know that rising gas prices are hurting you. I have learned that I'm not interested in what the president says nearly as much as I'm interested in what the president does. And so, talk cheap. And so, as a person who has gone to Washington hopefully to make a difference, it's time to do things that are in the best interest of America. So that's an issue that you're going to continue to hear more of. And I don't want to beleaguer the point, but that's something that you'll continue to hear. Another thing that I wanted to do today is I wanted to tell you about some of the pieces of legislation that we have supported and that we have dropped that I think you would find pleasing. I know that we have been working with I know the city leaders here on getting some additional park space for the park out on Capitol Circle. There is, and so we dropped a bill that would and wouldn't obligate the city or the county to more maintenance dollars. That's something that we talked about as well. But down the line, there is and it's close to the prison there, as you know. There is a piece of property there that I think the Park Service could, recreational park could use there. So we're working with your city officials, both city and county, to try to move that forward. Another thing that we're doing, I think, that is very important, and is the numeric nutrient criteria bill, the State Waters Partnership Act that we dropped a few weeks ago. Let me say this: I have a problem anytime a state, one out of the 50 states, is singled out, and that state is made to adhere to a standard, a higher standard than the other 49 states. That is, in my opinion, contrary to our republic form of government. And what has happened with the numeric nutrient criteria, and let me say this, in the legislative session here, the Democrat as well as Republican sides of the aisle both came together and unanimously in the Senate, State Senate, and in the State House passed a numeric nutrient criteria bill that urged the EPA, okay, to acknowledge Florida's Department of Environmental Protection standards regarding numeric nutrient criteria, and that our standards that we have determined in Florida, as long as they meet the clean water standards of the Clean Water Act, and that we are in line with the other 50 states, or the other 49 states in the country, that they would have to listen to us. To me, that makes sense. And so we dropped a bill basically that really, from the federal level, really praised the state and said the same thing to the EPA. Because just if the EPA got its standards through, and Florida did have to meet a standard higher than the rest of the country, just agriculture jobs alone, just ag, would lose almost 15,000 jobs in the state of Florida. Just ag. Now, Florida is the second leading producer of specialty crops in America. I know I serve on the Agriculture Committee. I am blown away by the 250 different crops that we grow here in the state of Florida. Everything from citrus to sugar to cotton to peanuts. It is incredible what our state does regarding farming and agriculture. And so we can ill afford right now, with our economy trying to come back, we can ill afford to lose 15,000 agriculture jobs. We can't afford to do that. So that's a piece of legislation. And one most recently that I'm very proud of is the No Budget, No Pay Act. I am fed up, and I mean fed up, okay, with Washington business as usual regarding budgeting or the lack thereof. And so what this act says is that if Congress, and by the way, that is both houses of Congress, and there are two houses of Congress, if you made it through civics, there is a House of Representatives and there is the Senate, okay? So when the president says there's a do-nothing Congress, actually I love when he says there's a do-nothing Republican Congress. It's rather humorous because he fails to point out the fact that what you and I know is that there is a Senate that is a part of the Congress as well. But what this act does is this act says that if we do not produce a budget by March, and the 12 appropriations bills that go along with the budget, and it passed the House and then passes the Senate, and the 535 members of Congress, both houses, we don't get a paycheck. That's pretty simple, isn't it? I like simple bills.
It has no chance of that.
How are they gonna add
No,
2,500
but-
pages to it?
I'm sorry?
How are they gonna add 2,500 pages to a simple bill like
Well,
that?
well, let me say this. We're getting support for this in the House. It will pass the House. And we've done some interesting polling on this little subject, and almost 90% of America agrees with that bill.
Wow.
Well, I hope you think I do.
Well, that's why I'm here. I do.
So my point is I want the Senate, okay, to have to take up bills that the American people agree with. And I think the American people agree that if we don't do a constitutional responsibility, like pass a budget, that we shouldn't get a paycheck. And so therefore, and by the way, it's not retro. So if we don't get a paycheck in March, and we don't pass a bill until April, I don't get that March paycheck. It's gone, it's done, it's over, it's not retro. So, I think that, that bill is picking up sponsorships, it's picking up interest. And let me say this, and it's not just Republican, okay? It's both sides of the aisle, okay? We're gonna have a Democrat sponsorship as well. So
Not a Senator Nelson.
I have not had a conversation with Senator Nelson on this bill. But I would certainly hope that we can get it out of the House and that the Senate has to make a proclamation to the American people, by the way, with bipartisan support. The key, I think, to making the Senate hear this bill is the number of Democrats that are going to support this bill in the House. And so we are getting, a large number of Democrat sponsors in the House. So if that bill does not get to the Senate floor, and if it does not signed into law by the President of the United States, I want to give the President and the Senate, plenty of opportunity to say that we're not listening to you, America. And I think that this is a good bill, and I think that it makes sense. So there are just certain things that we have to do as members of Congress, and I think a budget is paramount. So that's another piece of legislation. Now let me say this: we've started 30. I've been speaking for 30 minutes. You didn't come just to hear me speak. I want to hear from you. Part of being a good leader is to listen to your questions and listen to your concerns. And listen, I've learned, Susan and I have 4 daughters, and so there's 6 of us that live in a house, and there's a lot of days we don't have agreement in our house. But, you know, there's always, the girls seem to be disagreeing with us from time to time. But, look, in a room like this, we're gonna have people that disagree, okay? And that's okay. The one thing I require, and I've always said, that when we have town hall meetings, as long as we're respectful. And I think we can disagree and do so in a respectful manner. So, with that said, and you know, I want to answer questions, yes, ma'am.
I want to know how someone gets to be kingpin of the Senate, like Harry Reid.
The question was, she wants to know how somebody gets to be kingpin of the Senate like Harry Reid. Look, it's a democratic process. I mean, the party that controls the Senate, they vote for the Senate leader, just as in the House, we vote for the Speaker of the House. So, you know, the party that has the majority in both chambers determines who the leaders are going to be. You know, the Senate, though, as you know, senators serve for 6 years. So unless the Senate changes hands in November, we'll enjoy the leadership of Harry Reid for quite some time, since he was just elected back in 2010. So there's more than enough incentive for me to get out there and let me say this: I want a working partner, and if it is a Democratic senator, at least someone who will agree on the common sense principle that we need a budget. You know. Yes, sir.
I think it's a housekeeping question. Earlier in this Congress, the House passed a bill to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act. And it died in the Senate. Now, can that be resurrected, or at the end of this Congress, I guess, which is now over, does it have to be brought up again in the next Congress and voted on again in the House in order for Harry Reid to shoot it down again, unless we get it? I mean, you know, you guys passed it, sent it over to them, and they shelved it. And so what do we do to either force them to act on it, or can we at this point, or do we have to, it has to be brought up again?
Well, we can, look, Harry Reid, if he tables a bill, that bill could still be brought up at any time. I mean, if he had pressure from the American people, you know, then he could bring that bill up at any time. Now, we can also pass the bill again. I mean, we can also send it to him. You know, we keep sending the Senate the Keystone Pipeline Project. And we'll continue to send Harry Reid the Keystone Pipeline Project, and he will continue to see it and continue to hear about it. And to do so while at the same time gas continues to move towards $4 a gallon. So you know, again, I'm not interested in what they say. I'm interested in what they do. And I think that we will continue to bring that issue. You know, the health care bill is you're going to hear a lot about the health care bill over the next few months. As you know, the Supreme Court has the health care bill now, and they'll be hearing arguments regarding the constitutionality of the health care bill to see if government does have the right to mandate that you must purchase an item or service.
Took your freedom away. That's the end of your freedom then.
Yeah, some you know, a lot of people agree with you that it is a freedom issue. And so, you know, I think that it's going to be very interesting to hear, you know, the Supreme Court and to hear them weigh in on that. So I saw a little article yesterday of the Supreme Court that has never allowed, you know, photographers or never allowed cameras in the Supreme Court. They're going to stay consistent with that. They're not going to allow cameras. But this is probably going to be the most followed and most watched case that they have ever heard. So that's one thing. Another thing that we heard this week is that the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, that both parties rely on for scoring bills. And when I say scoring bills, to determine the cost of a particular bill. So both, you know, Washington as a whole, Washington, whether it's Democrat or Republican, everybody depends on the CBO to score the cost of a bill. Well, I don't know if you saw earlier in the week, the CBO came in and said that they made a mistake in 2010, and that the health care bill will not cost $800 billion, it will in fact cost about $1 trillion more than that, and going to be just under $2 trillion. So that's kind of a math error.
How many of those people are unemployed now?
And so it is. So what I'm saying is we're learning a lot about the healthcare bill. And most recently, and I don't know where you fall on this issue, I know that the Republicans and many of the conservatives, we were talking about the right of conscience, that at no point in time should a citizen ever be put in a situation where you violate your deeply held religious beliefs while you adhere to a legal law forced down upon you by your government. Now, some say that that was a freedom of conscience issue. Others say that that was an issue regarding birth control or women's contraceptives. So wherever you come down on that issue grows from the healthcare bill. So you're going to continue to hear, okay? You're going to hear a lot more about IPAB committee, the panel, the 15 individuals that will serve at the pleasure of the Health and Human Services Director, which currently is Kathleen Sebelius. And those are going to be the 15 individuals that will determine the reimbursement rates of Medicare. Not reimburse at a higher rate, but only to lower reimbursement rates to doctors and physicians. So this 15-person panel that the healthcare bill creates, that's going to work at the pleasure of the Secretary of HHS, they're going to have enormous power with no accountability. And I will tell you that I'm hearing from so many physicians around the country now that not only are they discontinuing to accept Medicare, but many doctors are just saying, hey, we've told our children there's no way that we want them to go into medicine. We do not want them to go to medical school. We're talking our children into other career paths, and we are, in fact, closing down our practice. So if the president and this administration thinks that the way to get to higher, better quality of health care is to diminish and shrink the pool of good physicians, they're going about it the right way then, I guess, if that's what they think is the way to do it. But I disagree. I think that, if you want to bring costs down, supply and demand say that you need more of it. If you want to bring costs down of oil, gasoline at the pump, then we have to have more of it. The president this week, in his own comments regarding the gas prices, just to jump back, said that the gas prices are rising and that he understands the pain of the American people. In a Politico article that I read yesterday, the president said, well, you got a supply issue because the crisis in the Middle East is continuing to put a clamp on supply. And then you've got a demand issue because you have China that he really seems to raise up as the model country to follow after. You've got China producing more highways and more people there are driving, and so they have a demand. So the president, clearly in his own comments, proved to all of us that he does understand supply and demand. Then he must also know that that in understanding supply and demand, he's acknowledging the fact that the surefire way to bring prices down would be to create the supply, create a larger supply. And again, I'm not interested in what he says. I'm interested in what he does. And so I'm somewhat disappointed in that. But enough about my pontification on that. Yes, ma'am.
Now that you brought up Medicare, the run on the pair of shoes that cost $400 proved to us what a materialistic society we've become. And I'm really concerned that if Social Security for people younger than 50 years old becomes an individual decision, I know from my own life, my children were more important than anything, and I didn't save anything. And fortunately, I had a job that they saved for me, and because I was able to choose that they saved it for me, because that's just not my strong point. And so I, thank God, have retirement and Social Security, but knowing that people don't save, they'd rather have 10 cell phones and 5 TVs, big screens, and 4 or 5 cars, and all the things that people throw money away on, they're not gonna save for their future. And if the federal government doesn't provide Social Security, when those people get old, the government's gonna take care of them anyway, but there's not gonna be any money that's been set aside to take care of them, because they opted to do it on their own, and then they didn't. And so I'm very fearful of the government giving the responsibility for Social Security to individuals to take care of themselves, because they aren't gonna do it. And I'm already furious about the government stealing our funds that that my daddy and me and even my children, after they grew up, started putting into Social Security for folks' future funding of the Social Security program, and it was all rated in 1983 or 86, and now it's not there. Well, I want the federal government to take all the money that they stole from us and add the interest that it would have accrued over these years since the 80s, and put it back in the Social Security Trust Fund and make it solid again, so that we aren't at risk of not having Social Security. So that's my comment. And what do you think about that?
First of all, let me say this. I appreciate the fact that you're worried about people that aren't worried for themselves, and you're a caring-hearted person. And I appreciate your willingness to continue to sacrifice for people that will continue to take from you. At some point in time, though, we got to be, I think, a little more realistic. And now let me be very, very clear on Social Security. In 1950, we had 17 workers working for every retiree. Okay, so what those 17 workers were paying for was the retirement benefits of those that had retired. And what I am paying for now really is for those who are entering retirement. And by the way, we have 10,000 individuals a day going into Social Security and Medicare. So it's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's a math issue. The math doesn't work. And so, because now we don't have 17 workers working for every retiree, we have 3. So, when you've got 3 working for every 1 retiree, and you have 10,000 retirees going into Medicare and Social Security every day, not every week, not every month, but every day, you can see that it is a massive problem. And then when you see the Medicare benefits that are important to all of you, you can see my anger at an administration who passed a health care bill after midnight, when nobody could really see what they were doing, that cut Medicare by $500 billion. And the president wants to be the champion for the seniors, and he cut Medicare by $500 billion. And then in the debt ceiling deal that just passed, that I voted against, and by the way, I voted to raise the debt ceiling in the cut, cap, and balance bill. We'll raise the debt ceiling, but we're going to institute some common sense principles of cutting and capping and balancing our budget before I'm going to give you any more money. Okay? That was passed the House, and that's one of those bills that Mr. Reed tabled. He didn't even get a vote. He tabled. So, but in the bill that did pass, that raised the debt ceiling, and that guaranteed a downgrade of our credit rating, because it only had $1.2 trillion in cuts. In that bill, If the super committee that it created did not reach an agreement, which they didn't, then we would go into something that was called sequestration. And in sequestration, we would cut defense by $500 billion, another $500 billion. There's also another cut in there, about $150 billion more dollars in cuts to Medicare. I voted no, because I am not going to allow this president to continue to destroy a program called Medicare and blame those members who really want to save it. And that's what he's doing. And that's what he's saying. And he then promised that he would veto any effort if Congress tried to get around sequestration and to avoid those cuts to Medicare. The president made it very clear that he would veto that effort, that he is dead set on cutting Medicare by another $150 million. Look, you can listen to what he says and march by those orders. But again, watch what he does.
He's got other plans.
He does have other plans.
As this debt ceiling fight is gonna obviously come up again in the summertime, my question is, sir, does the Republican leadership in the House have the courage to actually stand up and say, Harry Reid, if you won't work with us, we're gonna just let it shut down. We're gonna shut it down. You're gonna run out of money. We're not gonna appropriate any money. We're not gonna do a continuing resolution until you present a budget, until you present a plan, until you agree to work with us. We're done.
Look,
we stop.
I wanna make sure that our little tracker buddy here in the audience filming gets this. That I do not believe that in the year 2012 we can afford to shut the government down. Okay?
Can we afford to continue funding?
No, wait a second. I do believe that we could have shut down the Park Service early last year for a few days. Okay? I am somewhat aggravated because when you talk about a partial government shutdown, one of the things the president doesn't say in one of his many interviews, one of the things he doesn't say is he doesn't tell you that a partial government shutdown is not going to affect your Social Security. Okay, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that in a partial government shutdown that we are going to stop paying, that we're not going to stop paying paychecks to our armed service people that are overseas.
He did say they were going to.
Well, no, wait a second. He didn't say, no. What I'm saying is he doesn't say that on a CR ballot. Okay? Now, when you hit a debt ceiling, that's a different deal. When you hit a debt ceiling, when the federal government hits a ceiling and they can't spend any more, okay, only by an act of Congress, okay? When you hit that, then it becomes more challenging, okay? But you still have money coming back into the treasury, okay? You still have small businesses that are taking out, you know, Social Security and FICA and all that. You know, I mean, the economy doesn't stop because the government has hit a debt ceiling, okay? What the president doesn't say when we get in these CR battles, these continuing resolution battles, is that a partial government shutdown means a partial really for non-essential services. Now, it is essential that you get your Social Security checks. It is essential that you get your Medicare reimbursements. It's essential that our warfighters get their paychecks. But it's not essential that you go tour the Smithsonian Institute. Well, it's just not essential. I mean, it's a luxury.
So that the EPA regulates dust on farms
It's nice. But what happens when we hit a debt ceiling deal? You run the risk on a debt ceiling hit that you once the government spends all the money in its treasury, it can't borrow more money. You can't borrow more money.
So it would be a good thing.
So a lot of people agree. It would be a very good thing.
My credit card company
Now,
told me
let me say this.
can't spend any more money.
Let me say this. That on the debt ceiling deal, you know, that week, because the president was using fear mongering to scare people. Great leaders, in my opinion, comfort you and let you know we're gonna be okay. We're gonna work through this. We're gonna find a way, and we will find a better way, and we will make this. okay? Counterfeits, in my opinion, bad leaders are gonna use fear and fear mongering, okay, to their own personal gain. And so I just want you to know that what we did, we wanted, me and Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, we introduced a priority bill. That during the debt ceiling, we introduced a bill that said to the president, Mr. President, here's what we want. We want you, if we hit the debt ceiling, we want you to pay our debt, pay those that, pay our interest payments on our debt, because we have to protect our credit. Pay that. Pay those that we owe our money to. Secondly, pay our seniors their Social Security, including their Medicare payments. Thirdly, pay our veterans who have served this country well, and at the same time, pay the active duty servicemen and women who are serving now and who are sacrificing for this great nation. You pay them now. Take the fear element off the table. So you can't use them as a pawn to scare the American people. You pay them. Because remember, if you've got billions of dollars coming into the Treasury, he would have enough, if we hit a debt ceiling, he would have enough money to pay the seniors, pay our debt, and pay our veterans. And then, well, we'd have to make some hard choices. Y'all know about making hard choices, don't you? Where you have to buy the necessities. You don't have the luxury of buying the wants. Well, the federal government loves buying not just the necessities, but they buy 2 of the wants and then hand you the bill. That's irresponsible. That's ungodly.
Easy to spend somebody else's money.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to take off on a point she had made concerning values. And I've gotten stuff from you mailed to me and family values, which I think have been degraded significantly. But she was mentioning these materialistic values. And I wonder how much our economy, where people depend so much on the consumptiveness of others, that we have the consumer index. We need to have consumers consuming in order for this economy to function. If there isn't a potential inherent conflict when our values get so influenced by a materialistic economy and a need for people's livelihoods to depend on the materialistic consumptiveness of others, and if this is a really much deeper issue than the attention that's being given to it, and if you can tie the problem with family values, in fact, to these other values that are in so many ways encouraged by this economy, and start to ask questions about maybe this economy, as much as we love it and worship it, is at the heart of a lot of our problems, and that we need to start to question things that we have not been questioning in the sense of urgency that you talked about, and about bringing these kind of issues when you talk with members of Congress, and I would think people on both sides of the aisle, when you get below the surface, would agree that lack of trust is a problem, and that they ought to consider a sense of urgency to gain trust, including for members of Congress to do a symbolic gesture like take a pay cut, voluntarily, to convince the people that they do recognize these problems, and invite other people out there to make the same kind of a sacrifice, especially those who can afford to. And I know this may go counter to your philosophy, I don't know, but I think when you get below the surface, you start to approach things differently. And that's what I don't see happening. Members on opposite side of the aisle, I think if you get deep enough, you'd say you're right. And then maybe come to the surface from beneath.
Well,
but I thought her issue about values.
Yeah, but I mean, let me say this. I mean, values is here's a question that needs to be asked. I mean, what is truth? What is truth? I mean,
it's what we make it out to be.
Well, and so no, it's not. Truth is absolute, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
and I'm holding it up, and I put this in my pocket. And I want you to know, it's the first town hall meeting I've ever pulled it out and read it.
Well, I'm glad I was able to get something to do. I'm glad I had something that worked.
You provoked me to read this. It is impossible to rightly govern a nation without God and the Bible. You know who said that? You know whose name is up there?
John Adams?
George Washington, the father of our nation. I don't think anybody has the boldness to say that he was off the reservation. And I think this guy right here was the epitome of values. Okay? I mean, he was a surveyor by trade. Surveyors. One thing I've learned about surveyors, they write legibly,
Do man.
and they're exact. They're exact. And so when George Washington states that it is not hard or not tricky or not, no. In his exactness, he says it is impossible to rightly govern. Now, without God and Bible. Now, for me, and I've been very, very proud to stand before people in this district and claim to me, I've built my life on that absolute truth. Doesn't make me perfect, because I'm not. Just ask my kids. Just ask Susan, my wife. I mean, they'll find that I'm flawed. I'm coming to you. That you're welcome to keep your hand up. I mean, you can continue to, but I'm not perfect. But I do have something that I measure my success against. And I am proud that 230 years later, that I have the same standard that arguably the greatest leader in this country's history had, exactly like his.
And I bet every member of Congress would get up and say that. I bet they all would get up and say
Well,
that.
let me say this, I'm not interested in you watching what I say.
I know, and that's
I
why I
am very
say what they
interested
do.
in you
and what
watching
they
what I
say.
do. And what I'm most proud about, and this is good, make sure we got that camera focused. This is good. Okay? I'm proud of the fact that in my life, what I have done mirrors what I have said. And it is in line, not with perfection,